We begin the new Masechta, Masechtas Nedarim. Someone just pointed out to me, Tesa said in Ksubis that it speaks about Hamader, by the Isha taking a Neder. So it talks about the next Masechta is Masechtas Nedarim, taking a vow, and therefore that's why it comes up in Seder Nashim, although one would think that it would have no application, because we talk about women, but that's where it comes up in the previous Masechta of Masechtas Ksubis, as Nedarim applied to the woman in marriage, and therefore we get into Masechtas Nedarim. Joining us for today's daf, this new Masechta. So Masechtas Nedarim starts off, and the Mishnah and the Ran explains in detail the various terms that a person may use to effect the neder. And the Gemara in Amud Beis is attempting to understand why the Mishnah chose to list the various terms in that particular order, as we'll explain. Some of the important terms and concepts we'll discuss in today's daf, which the Ran will go through in detail, is neder is different than shiur. Neder, vow, is a isur chevtza, is something in the object itself. So you say davar ze asur alai, this object is forbidden on me, and therefore you can make someone else's object forbidden because it's about the object on yourself, but you wouldn't be able to, let's say, make it forbidden on someone else. It's something dependent on the object. There's a concept called hatfasa, which means like to grab, but it's like you can go ahead and project one thing onto another thing. You say, davar ze asur alai ki karba. So you're going to take the quality of one thing and put it onto something else, but that specifically has to be, as the Ram will explain, the davar hanadar. You could only take it in something, let's say, a vow made it forbidden, like a carbon. A carbon is a regular animal, it's permitted, but when you take a vow, it makes it forbidden, and now you're going to grab that and subject that to something else. But a bedavar ha'asr would not apply the halacha of a neder. So let's say davar ze asur alai, let's say this loan is forbidden me kinavela, and the vela is an intrinsically forbidden thing. If the Torah says forbidden, that would not allow the halachic process of atfasa, that wouldn't work. On the contrary, shvua, an oath, is a issa gavra, is a prohibition in the person himself. He says, shvua shelo ichel davar, I'm not going to eat this thing. It's something in the personality, not in the object, and therefore they have two different halachas. Our Masechta opens up with kinuyin, which are alternate or slang expressions. So, although generally the yuneder would be, let's say, davar hatali, let's say bedavar hanadar, let's say by a carbon, then there's slang, which is kainim, kainach, kainas. There's a slang on the primary terminology, and then there's yadis, which takes up a big chunk in today's daf, which is a partial, and the next, actually, for the next many blot, is regarding a partial statement. The reason why it's called a yad is just like when you want to hold on to a vessel, when you grab the handle, and then you'll be able to move the whole object. So to a yad is not really the whole thing, it's a partial statement, and we're going to talk about what's called mechichis, ein mechichis, if it's indicative or it's not proven that what you're trying to say, and that's one of the other ways of making a neder. So begin the current Daf Beis, we begin the new Masechta Nedarim. Although we always use Rashi, but as some Gemaras have, bringing here from the Meshitim Mukabetzes, that the printed Rashi over here is not really Rashi, so the custom is generally to learn it with the Ran. The Ran is actually an interesting combination. It's amalgamation of Pirush and also like a commentary of like Taisvis. So we're going to use primarily the Pirush of the Ran. It's all together, so I skip obviously. But I'm going to try to do as much as possible because they are very short dafim. It's not so long. Nedarim is written very differently than all the other Masechtas. It's from a previous version, not a later version. So you'll see it's very, very different flavor of how it's written than, let's say, Masechta Ksubis, which was crystal clear like a Shaskan. So with that we begin the Daf Beis. So the Ran points out that there's a neder could be one of two different ways. There's two different types of categories of Nedarim. There's nidri hektish. You take a vow for hektish, you're sanctifying something for the bedek habayis, for the temple upkeep, for the mizbeach. And regarding this topic of neder, a person can only sanctify which is his own. And the prohibition would apply to every single person. When you make something hektish, it's forbidden to everything, to everyone. Or there's another type of neder, what's called a nidri isser, taking a neder to make something forbidden on himself, which was permitted up until this point. Regarding that, a person can make forbidden even someone else's object because it's prohibited on him, and it's not a global isser. So says the Ran, this Masechta discusses a specific type of a neder, what's called a nidri isser, a vow of prohibition, and not regarding the nedarim of hektish. Now, this that we say in the opening words you'll see on the first line is charam kecharamim, which is actually generally a terminology of a neder of hektish. That's only because the terminology of cherem, just like it implies cherem bedek abayis, which is a dedication for the Beis Hamikdash, so it implies nidri iser, as we'll see in the mission later on, the Zayin and Beis. Someone says, Harini alecha cherem, I'm on you a cherem. So the one who's the subject is forbidden. Or Hari atalai cherem, you're on me a cherem, so the one taking the vow is going to be forbidden. And that's why we say the case of charamim over here, because if it was told about cherem bedek abayis, it would have no application over here. It would be in Mesechtes, what he calls in Seder Kachim. It would be in a different Masechta, it wouldn't be in this Masechta of Nedarim. Now, again, this Ran is one of the, if you're learning in Yeshiva, you'd be learning this Ran for a long time, because he goes through some basic principles. The Nidre Isser, which is the type of Nedarim we're talking about here in this Masechta, he says is one of three different ways, and these are very important principles that he puts down over here. There's the primary Neder, which is the actual vow itself. There's the Kinuyav, which is like slang, and then there's Yadis, which are handles. So the primary neder, he says, if someone's going to say, Davaza Asulai, this is a forbidden ami. And this is whether, and he introduces the principle that we mentioned also, whether he does hatfasa, which is grabbing, transferring something else, or whether he's not through transferring something else. That's the neder that's written in the Torah. It's just that if you're doing hatfasa, if you're transferring, it has to be what we call bedavar hanadar. It's something that itself was prohibited through a vow, and not bedavar asur, not something that's intrinsically forbidden. Because as the Gemara brings in Shavuos of Chafim Aveis, it says in the pasuk Yider Neder LaHashem. Until the Yader Bedavar Hanadar, it's Yider Neder. It has to be that your neder is dependent on something that itself was forbidden as a neder. So although a vow could take effect even without atfasa, but if you're doing transferal, then you have to be bedavar hanadar, not bedavar ha'asar. So therefore, where a person does hatfasa, he's saying that this should be like that. And he says that this loaf of bread should be on me like a carbon, his neder takes effect, and that is the primary neder. Now, our Mishnah opens up with the next thing. Kol kinuya, well, that's the title of the parak. Kol kinuya nidar. All slang of nidar. A slang is, instead of using the word carbon, we said that one of the ways of making neder is doing hatfasa. Transferring, saying that this carbon which is forbidden through a neder should also be, let's say this loaf should be just like that. So let's say, it doesn't say the word carbon, he says kainim, or kainich, or kainis. So whoever says this, it's going to be forbidden, kinedar, as if he said that this loaf of bread should be on me like a carbon. That's what the Mishnah means when it says kol kinui nedarim, kinedarim. The slang is like the neder itself. So the Ran explains that these slang is a machlekes of Yechon and Shlakish in the Gemara later on of Yudam and Alf. Yechon says, what's these slang words? It's non-Jewish, it's secular language. Rishlakish says, no, these are words that the Chachamim made up to use that when people want to take a neder. Now, according to Rabbi Yechanan, it says that it's a secular language. For sure, the one that takes a neder with them, of course, it's going to be like as if you're making a primary neder, because nedarim are nemarim chalashim that can be said in any language. So of course, it's going to work. So, but however, even according to Rish Lakish, who says that these are words that the Chachamim made up, they're also going to be a biblical bona fide neder. Why? Because he says all language is only agreement of, it's actually this week's parsha, by the Dair Haflaga, the language is just the agreement of one person to another that this sound should mean this word. It doesn't have any intrinsic inherent value. It's only Lashon HaKodesh that has that. So it says the agreement of the Chachamim that they decide that kainim kainich should be words for neder is no less than some ancient Homo sapien that decided that this should mean chair or table or whatever, this and that, and therefore it's going to be a biblical neder too. And so that's the reason why it's called that kinuyin. In other words, it is from the terminology of a neder. It's just a slang, like when you give someone a nickname, it's called a kinui. So that's what it's saying, that these are kinuyin nedarim. Now, the yadis of nedarim, so that was again the primary neder. There's a nickname, a slang of a neder, whether that be secular language or whether that be the names that the Chachamim made up. And then there's also the ayad of nedarim, which is that you started saying the words of a neder, you just didn't go ahead and finish it. That partial speech is as if you made a vow of your whole sentence you meant to say. Like we said, like someone who's holding on to the handle of a vessel, and that's how you move the whole vessel. And that's where the neder is going to take effect, and later on, the Mishnah is going to explain this halacha of yadis. So that's what we're saying, that all the kinuyin nedarim are like nedarim, and the charamim. In other words, if someone says that these nechasim should be on him cherech, he doesn't say the word chedim. He says slang. Again, whether that be the words of the chachamim or whether that be secular language, that's also charamim. It's going to be as if he said that these nechasim should be on me like a cherem, and they're going to be forbidden on him. So to b'shvuos. In other words, this is all about kinuyim. These are all whatever category of vow you're taking, whether it be neder or cherem or shvua. So it's going to be kashvuos. It's going to be as if you took a shvua, and it's going to go ahead and take effect. The nazirus. Same thing is also if someone says harini nazik pozich, instead of saying the word nazir, he's saying like some type of a slang. There's also going to be kinazirus as if he said harini nazir. Now, this is the end of the idea about kinuyim. Now the Gemara is going to explain on Amud Beis that the rest of the Mishnah is talking about the next category of yodis. So we didn't speak about the primary nedarim at all. We opened up with the idea of kinuyim, of slang, and now we're going to the third category of yodis. Says the Mishnah, if someone says to his friend, mudrani mimcha, I am from a neder from you. Mefreshani mimcha, I'm separated from you. Merchakni mimcha, I'm distant from you. Sha'ani oichel that I'm going to eat from you. Sha'ani taim lecha, that I'm going to taste from you. So the Gemara explains that Abdal Mabeis, what it really means to say is that these two halves are together. So a person is saying, Mudrani mimcha, I'm a neder from you. Sha'ani oichelach, that what I'm going to eat from you. Or Midrani mimcha, Sha'ani taim lecha. And so too by Mefreshani, Merchakni. This is what's called a yad, because he doesn't really finish the sentence to say kikarbon. He didn't say, he says, I'm separated from you from what I'm going to eat from you, and he's supposed to say like a carbon. He didn't say like a carbon. Or the Ran says, because he didn't say explicitly that he's making it prohibited. He just said, I'm separated from you from what I'm going to eat from you. And as the Ram himself actually brings, the Gemara is going to have a discussion if the words are sha'ani toyim lecha or she'eni toyim lecha, that I am going to taste from you or that I'm not going to taste from you. Is there a yud there or not? But be that as it may, and that says the Mishnah Aser. So this is what's called a yad. It's not finishing your sentence all the way, but it seems to be pretty clear what you mean to say, and therefore it's going to be forbidden. Now the last case says the Mishnah manu dani lecha, which that's like as if he was in a state of nidui, where he's forbidden to do business with him. So too he's like saying like I'm forbidden on you like a state of nidui. So that Rabbi Kiva was not sure about this. Lahachmer, to be stringent, where it's going to be forbidden also because it is an idea about a neder, but it wasn't so clear to him, and the Gemara is going to explain exactly on Daf Zayin what was it that he was in doubt about, and what did the Chacham disagree with him. Now we continue to Amud Beis, where the Gemara gets into the technicality of the order of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, Kol kinuyi nedarim k'nedarim. All slang of nedarim is like nedarim, etc., and it discussed all the slang. So the question is, Maishna Gabi Nazar, why is it by Masechtas Nazar, the next Masechta, the Lekatami Lil Kulu, it doesn't say, it opens up the same way. Kol kinuyi Naziris, it talks about all the slang of Naziris, all like Naziris. It doesn't mention Cherem and Shvua and Nedarim, it doesn't mention them all. What's the difference over here by Nedarim when we're talking about the Masechta of vows? The Ketani Lakulu, we go through all the different categories. Why don't you just mention Nedarim? Says the Gemara, the reason is Mishum the Neder or Shvua Sibigabadadi. So here we're talking about Nedarim. Now, Neder and Shvua are written in the same pasuk. It says Ki Yider Neder Lashem Ahishav Shvua. So they're written right near each other. So therefore, Tani Tartan. Therefore, we mention both of them. Now, but given the Tani Tartan, now once we're mentioning both of them. So Tani Lakula, therefore we mention all of them because you're already mentioning more than the primary category. So once you're mentioning others, we're going to say them all. Okay, but then says the Gemara, if that's the case, that's why you said them all, because you wanted to say Shavuos with Nedarim. But listening, Kinuyi Shavuos bas Nedarim. The order is not like that. You first mention different cases, and only then you come to Shavuos subsequently. But why? If the reason why you're mentioning more is only because Shavuos are written right after that in the pasuk with the Nedarim, it should have been the second one listed, not the other ones. It says the Gemara, yeah, but I did on the Nedarim, so we're mentioning the rest because we're mentioning Shavuos. But once we mention the Nedarim, the mitzvah chefza leham, as we mentioned in the introduction, there's a different lumdus, a different mechanics for how they work. A neder is that the object is forbidden. So in other words, he makes the loaf of bread has a prohibition on it towards him. And he says that the eating of the bread is forbidden on me. So it's the bread that has the prohibition. So Tanina Mecharamim, so therefore we mentioned also right after that the halacha of Charamim, because the mitzvah chetzalah, Chayrim is also that this object has the prohibition. Lafoki Shvuah, that comes to exclude from an oath, the Ka'asar Nafshim in Chavtza, where he makes himself forbidden from the object.
A specific object or all objects similar to that object.
Whatever it is that the Shvuah is. But it's in the Gavra, it's in the person who the prohibition is. It's an action that he's not allowed to do, versus a neder in the Chayrim is in the object itself. The question is, where is the prohibition in? Is it in the object or is it in the personality? So therefore, by Shvuah, he's saying, Shaloi oichel kikar zeh. He says, I'm not going to eat this loaf of bread. That is different than this loaf of bread is forbidden on me. And therefore we said Chayrim together with neder because it has the same characteristic in contrast to the case of Shvuah. And we'll see if we have time, maybe we'll go through some of the other points that the Ram brings up, but let's first do the primary ideas. So the Gemara wonders, okay, Pasach b'kinuyin, you open up by mentioning this halacha, and that was the topic of the parak. You open up with the words kol kinuyin. You say kol kinuyin nadarim. You say all the slang of nadarim are like nadarim, and chayrim are like chayrim, and all the slangs are going to work. And then, umafadish yadis, when you come in to explain, guess what you talk about? You talk about a different category altogether. You talk about the halacha of handles. You say, tell your friend that I am that I'm forbidden as a neder from you, which the Ran adds another layer to the Gemara's questioning. What the Gemara is asking is, yes, of course we're opening up with kinuyim, because even if you're going to say, as oftentimes the Gemara does say, and the Gemara is going to say, that the Mishnah is maybe, okay, mechsera. We say oftentimes there's words missing. But what the deeper question the Gemara is asking is, we never say that the opening words are missing, because a person wouldn't miss the opening words. You'll say sometimes the middle words are missing. So if by default you're most definitely opening up with kinuyim, even if you're going to tell me that you're also, what was missing from the words in the Mishnah are the category of yadas, but then you should have at least explained what was mentioned first. How can you go ahead and explain first yadas, even if you say yadas are missing, but first explain the first thing that you discussed? And question number 2 is, Besu, as the Gemara, yadas inshi, the whole category of yadas itself, you didn't even mention it at all to go ahead and explain it. So the Gemara first answers the second question first before it answers the first question. It says, okay, no ayah behind it is talking about yadas, but chasur mechsa, but that word's missing. Then this is how it should say in the Mishnah. Kol kinun nadarim k'nadarim, all the slang of nadarim are like nadarim. And this is what's missing, v'yadais nadarim k'nadarim. Those words were missing. It was omitted. And the handles of nadarim are like nadarim. So it is talking about yadas. But now the Gemara is asking, okay, even though you answered the last question, but the first question is still difficult. V'lifrish kinun b'reisha, but at least explain the first thing that you mentioned. Explain it first. And the Gemara answers that no, it's very normal for the Tana to explain Ahu desalik minei, that which we finished off with, Ahu mef'adas b'reisha. It actually explains it first. Kedetnan, as the Gemara brings many different rayas, the last thing we mentioned is going to be the first thing we're going to explain. Mishnah says in Masechta Shabbos, a well-known Mishnah, that what are you allowed to light with on Friday night? What type of candles will stay well lit, which was not? And what is explained? It explained first the second category. Also, another Mishnah Masechta Shabbos says, there are certain things you're allowed to insulate with, certain things you're not allowed to insulate with for Shabbos, because we're concerned that you might come to heat it up. And what do we explain first? What are you not allowed to insulate with? The second category. So too over there, Masechta Shabbos says, what is a woman allowed to go out with? What is she not allowed to go out with? Because certain types of jewelry or certain types of items we consider she might take off, might come to carry. And what is explained first? Explain first the second category. So you see, says the Gemara, that it's the second one. So if we're explaining the second question by saying that yadas were missing, and that makes sense. That would be the first thing we would explain, because we explained the second thing. The Gemara says, is that really true? The Pasach, wherever you open up with something, you don't explain it first. Like the Ran explains, the Gemara thinks that when you answered that the last thing we mentioned, that's the first thing we explained, that's specifically like that. Because if there would be no particularity, then all Mishnah should have been the same way, which would be the last one. And therefore the Gemara is asking, but what's not? And the Gemara is going to bring a whole list of things that you see we explained the first thing. The Mishnah says in Baba Basra, Yesh noichlin umachilin. There are certain people that inherit and bequeath, meaning they have a dual relationship. They could inherit from that person, and then the other person could inherit from them too. Who is that? Says the Ran, that's a father to his sons, where both of them he could inherit from them and he could bequeath to them. If a child passed away, Chas Hashem, the father will inherit. If the father passed away, the child will inherit. There are certain people that they only inherit, but they did not bequeath to the person that they inherit from. Who is that? That's a man from his mother. A mother does not inherit the child. A woman doesn't inherit from a child. A child can inherit from the mother. And what does the Mishnah say? Which one does it explain first? The first category of those who are neichel machilin. So you see the first one's being explained. So too there's a Mishnah Masechta Zivamis that says, Yesh mutaros lebalein, there are certain women that are permitted to their husband, but vasturis levimein, but they're forbidden to their yavam, to the brother-in-law. Who's that? So that's, for example, if you have a regular kohen married a widow, and he has a brother kohen gadol. So he's allowed to marry a widow, but the kohen gadol is not allowed to marry a widow. So she's permitted to her husband, but she's forbidden to her yavam. And then you have categories the other way around. Mutaros levimein, they're permitted to the brother-in-law, but vasturis levimein, they're actually forbidden to their husbands. What case is that? The other way around. If a kohen gadol gets engaged to an almana and he has a brother kohen hedger, so the kohen gadol is forbidden to his wife. That's almana, but the brother-in-law, the kohen hedger, is permitted. And what is explained first? And it says that these are permitted to their husbands, permitted to the yavamin, which is the first category. Again, you see that is explained in the first one. So to another case, the Mishnah Masechta Menachos says yesh tu'unei shemnu levayim. There are those of menachos, of flour offerings that require oil and frankincense. What type of menachas are those? That's a minchas silas, a flour mincha, or machavas macheshes, that's a deep pan or shallow pan of a mincha. And then you have certain types of menachas that require shem v'loy levayna, oil but not frankincense. What type of mincha is that? That's called minchas nesachim. That's the libation flour offering that actually comes with a carbon oil or carbon shlam. And what is explained first? And these require oil and frankincense, which is again the first category. You see how different Masechtas Nadarim is, how it's going through all these different. It's just written very differently, but that's what it is again. And then it brings another example. It says over there Masechtas Menachos, yesh tu'unas hagasha. There are certain menachas that require that the kohen brings it to the corner of the mizbeach by the southwestern corner, like it says Zois Mincha Hakabayis Ben Aaron Lefnei Hashem, and the Gemara explains in Seit Daf Yodal. That means you have to bring it to the southwestern corner. So there are certain menachas that require hagasha, but the ain tunais tunufa, but they don't require the elevation procedure, which the kohen puts his hand beneath the hands of the owner and they wave it. What type of mincha is that? That's a minchas chayte, the sinner's offering. Requires hagasha, but not tunufa. And then you have certain menachas the other way around. Requires tenufa, the waving procedure, v'loy hagasha, not bring it near to the corner of the mizbeach. What's that? That's the loig of oil of the mitzayir with his carbonashim, and by bikurim. Bikurim required tenufa, but no hagasha. And then it explains ve'elu tu'unis hagasha, and these require hagasha and not tenufa. So again, it explains the first one. Another raya, very lengthy Gemara, just pointing out that you have many such mishnayos. The Mishnah Masechta B'chayros that says yesh b'chayr lenachla, that there is a case of a firstborn that he'll get a double portion of inheritance, but ve'im b'chayr l'kohen, he will not be considered a firstborn requiring pidyon haben from the kohen. Shigmar explains over there that it's a child that's born after a miscarriage, or also let's say someone, and the reason for that is because it's not a peterechem, it's not the first one to come out of the womb, but it is the first one of a child that was a viable child. So it'll be a b'chayr for nachla, but it won't be b'chayr for pidyon haben. Or in other cases, that the husband didn't have children, but the woman had already given birth beforehand. So it's not the peterechem, it's not the first one coming out of the womb, but it is his firstborn. So therefore it's going to be b'chayr l'nachla, but it won't be b'chayr l'kohen. And then you have the other way around. You have b'chayr l'kohen, but ve'im b'chayr l'nachla. Which case is that? For example, if let's say he had children beforehand, so it's not his firstborn, but he married a woman now who never had children before. So it will be a peterechem, so it will be a pidyon haben. And the Mishnah explains, what's the case of a b'chayr for the inheritance, but not a b'chayr for the kohen, which again is explained in the first category. So the Gemara has a whole long list of cases that you see were explained in the first case, not the second case. You told me that we explained the second case, not the first case. So the Gemara has an answer which it will reject. It says, no, Halin, all the cases you just brought me, in Mishum de Avshile, is because they have many halachas. And if you're going to explain backwards, you're going to come to make a mistake. So therefore, Mafarsha Hud the Pasuk Bereisha, then we have to go in order, the first one, and go in order that way. But if you don't have that reason, then yes, we specifically go with the last one that we ended off with. It's just that if we go backwards, you'd lose track. So therefore, we went in order because it's so many halachas. The Gemara rejects this because Baha'ya have a Mishnah Masechta Shabbos that says, with what could an animal go out with on Shabbos and what could it not go out with? There's not many halachas, it's a very simple one or two things. And still we say the first case, which is what a camel could go out with, and not what it cannot go out with. So the Gemara concludes as Gitin Dabav Gimel and Aleph, Ella, this is the answer. Lav Dafka, it's not precise. Zimnim Mefarsha with the Pasuk Bereisha, sometimes it's going to explain the thing that it opened up with, and Zimna Hud the Salat Mefarsha Bereisha, and sometimes the thing that it ended off with is going to explain first, like we're explaining over here in our Masechta, in our Mishnah, which we opened up with Kinuya, Kol Kinuya, Nedarim Nedarim, and guess what? We start explaining others. So we said, oh, it's Chesur Mechsur, there are words missing. We say, okay, even though it's missing, but it's not the opening thing that's missing. The opening thing is still Kinuyim. So why don't you explain that first? So the Gemara is saying, yes, sometimes you can be the last thing, sometimes the first thing, and here it's going to be even the last thing. As the Ram points out.
But the last thing is not the others, it's zeros.
Yeah, but those are, no, that's all Kinuyim. That's not Nazir to Nazir. There's many cases of Kinuyim. A slang of Nedarim or Charamim or B'Shvuros of Naziris is like the Naziris. That's Kinuyim. And then what's missing is Yadis. And then we come to explain Yadis. If you say partial statements, you're not really saying the whole statement. That's the case of Yadis, which we didn't say, but it's and that could be the last thing. Now the Ran just points out the reason why the Tanoim changed the order is to actually let you know that there is no particularity, and you could say it whatever you want to. Why did the Tana have to tell you that? Because the Gemara elsewhere explains in the beginning of Pesachim what's called a tivcha lashon harumim. You always should say things in the most choicest way, and if there really would be a right way, you would then learn from the Mishnah to say it in that way. So if you're telling someone a whole long list of things, and I come to explain to him, you would go, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, you say, okay, this is how you have to do it. You learn from the Mishnah is azay titna, azay fitman. So the Tanaim wanted to tell you that no, it doesn't make a difference. You could go either from the first thing or the last thing, and that's, he says, the Ran. That's why sometimes it's like this, something like that, so that you should know that it doesn't make a difference, and it's not a halacha of a tivcha room that you should go ahead and specifically choose like that. That's the end of the daf. Now there are some other pointers that the Ran points out. It's a shayla if we should do it like that. That's it. We could. This is when I say this. Okay, we thank Torah anytime for the daf. Then there's some other things that once we're mentioning we could talk about. This is like the Taisus part of it. Is it Zugim? Is it Endigan? What do you want to do? Huh? So I'm just gonna go back to some of the pointers that the Ran. It doesn't make a difference.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
The other examples that the Gemara brought down, why didn't they answer the same question over there by all the different cases that they knew? They did the same question.
Are you saying in the Masechta Shabbos, whatever
Shabbos or yeah.
To ask it over there, why doesn't it mention like that?
Maybe they did.
I'm trying to remember actually if it does or it doesn't. But here the reason why it stood out more was because he didn't mention it at all. We didn't mention even Yadis. And then we're saying, okay, you're saying it's missing, but even if it's missing, so then why is it explaining it first? Meaning it's like a flag. You know, we have this sometimes, like when we say, what's the right? We say, if you find the star, we suddenly start questioning the authenticity. You should always question authenticity. No, we say, once there's a flag on the floor, we start looking into this more.
That could also be that's a normal thing.
Right, but we have a bunch of cases of that the last one is being mentioned.
I'm saying, so that's why the Gemara over there might not ask that question. That's
on the first ones?
Yeah.
But what's with the ones that I mentioned last?
Here, you're taking the last one. And
Right, but then we put a whole long list of things.
I understand.
So maybe they ask, we could look it up.
Right. We could end whichever one. Alright, thank you for joining the 10 plus. So let's just stop for now.